Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio, talking in the aftermath of the death of Soleimani about what this means. I'm joined by Lieutenant General Steve Kwast, former commander of Air Education and Training Command. General Kwast, welcome. I had originally asked you, and I'm going to get to talk to you about Space Force because of your role in bringing it to fruition. But I've got to ask, such a recent veteran of American armed forces, your reaction to the killing of Soleimani yesterday.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. And, like most things, these events are connected. When you take a look at the world history and the nation's struggle for power and for ideals, what you see is there's always a desire for those who do not have power to get power. And that's what Iran has been doing. And this is just the latest event in a whole series of historical events that are a part of this constant clash of cultures. So he was an evil man, and he killed many Americans. And even though killing is always wrong, and it is never a good thing, sometimes you have a tough choice, a dilemma between good and evil. And if good men do nothing, evil wins.
Now, General Kwast, there are fears of retaliation. They have ballistic missiles in Iran. They have some Navy. We have a lot of assets over there with which you are probably very familiar. Do we have the ability to defend Americans stationed at, say, Al-Assad and various regional bases like Kuwait and Qatar and Saudi Arabia? Do we have the capacity to deter those missiles?
Absolutely. And you use the word deterrence, though, because, and I want to just tug on that point a little bit. Deterrence is really a concept that is predicated on the culture that you're trying to deter. For example, nuclear weapons don't tend to deter China. China does what they want. Does what they want to do. And but so with Iran, we have the ability to win, but you also have to ask the question: at what cost? And this is where technology plays in, and this is where space plays in, and one of the conversations I think that's important right now. Because as we watch this world change, you're going to see these despots start getting together. Take a look at what Turkey and Russia were doing together. Take a look at what Russia and China and Iran are doing together. These despots start ganging up on the big dog on the block, which is America. And so we can defend ourselves, but the question is, at what cost? It would be like you asking the question after Pearl Harbor, can America defend itself against Hitler and Japan? And the answer is yes, but at what cost? Well, it took the entire industrial might and the cultural focus of America and 4 years to finally bring that to an end. At what cost?
So, General, let's turn to my original subject for you. Yesterday's attack was done by a drone. I'm sure that drone was receiving data from all over the world, but also from space. Am I correct in assuming our satellite force was operational in part of this attack?
Well, you never want to reveal operational techniques, tactics, and procedures. But I will tell you that the American military might is connected like a network to all elements of power, and to include the diplomatic, the statesmanship, the economic, the informational. So you can make an assumption that we are a network force using all aspects of the network to achieve success.
So how important was it that President Trump separated out, declared a new Space Force, and named its first chief of staff this week?
Well, it's very important, and it's the first step in developing independence. And this is something that has been true throughout history. Technology has always been an instrument of national power. And if technology is used cleverly, it changes world power, and it can be the rise and fall of civilizations. From the moment the caveman harnessed the power of fire, to the development of the steam engine, to the airplane, to the nuclear weapon, to electricity, you name it. Technology changes power. And what is interesting about space is it's not one technology. Space is like the superpower of our age, that in the last 5 years, we have discovered techniques, procedures, scientific knowledge, and engineering expertise that can allow space to become a geography, to transform the four engines of power, energy and energy delivery, transportation, to be able to deliver anybody anywhere in the world in less than an hour, information, where it's ubiquitous and available to everybody, like GPS, and manufacturing, where you can use the attributes of space to be the great air conditioner for free and the great solar furnace from the sun for free, to do all five kinds of things you could never do in a gravity well of Earth.
So what that leads me to ask next is, are we vulnerable or are we ahead in space? And by that, I mean, I read books like Ghost Fleet, which is a Tom Clancy kind of thriller set in the near future where China begins its attack on the United States with an attack on our satellite capability. Is that realistic?
Well, those futurists are really clever at describing the implications of technology on future cultures and future human nature. And so there will be elements to it. It's like watching Star Trek in the 60s. Everybody thought it was all just fantastical until we got the flip phone, and then somebody said, hey, wait a minute, Roddenberry really had an interesting idea there on how the electromagnetic spectrum could be useful to human beings. The same is true here with China. You asked the question, is China ahead or are we ahead? And it depends on how you look at how you frame the technology you're looking at. Because the answer is both. In places we're ahead and in other places we're not. So the analogy I'll give you that is an accurate analogy based on 33 years of me studying China, studying culture, studying history, studying technology, and studying strategy. We in America are like a race car going 90 miles an hour, and China's on our bumper. And this is the race to space. Okay, so we're a sports car going 90 miles an hour. China's on our bumper, and China's going 120 miles an hour. We've got a better car. We've got the best car made. We've got a Tesla, and they've got a Ford or a Chevy, or not to be pejorative to those. Let's say they've got an
Edsel.
An Edsel. There you go. But it's a fast Edsel because they put an engine in it to beat all engines. And if we don't, and so when you look at the trend lines, they're going to be passing us in the next few years if we do not change our strategy. And here's why. They have already organized. They already have a Space Force. They do not have the problem of annual budgets that Congress has to approve and continuing resolutions where the Department of Defense cannot start anything new. So we are crippled by our system, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. It makes sure you don't fail too fast, but it also means that you don't go very fast if you're asking the bureaucracy and the system to do it. And so we are ahead in the sense that we make better technology. We are behind in the sense that they have an organization, a focus, a vision to optimize the three elements that make you dominant in a new geography: superior maneuver, superior firepower, and superior communications. And they are doing that not just in the orbits, but outside the orbits, all the way to the moon and on the far side of the moon. We are not. And so given a few years, they will develop this, we call it cislunar space, but the economy of space between Earth and the moon and beyond. China will have developed fueling stations and communication stations and people and mining on the moon. This is coming, and they're building it, and America is not.
Do you think there remains residual doubt about that future in too many people? I don't doubt it at all because I read about China and what they intend to do, but I don't know that America is persuaded yet that space is other than the set for a bunch of big movies and television series.
Right. Well, this is human nature, and it should be forgiven. But every civilization stumbles on this same fact that it's hard to move out of a mindset that has made you very comfortable and very prosperous. So if you and I were talking and it was 1898, and I came on your show in 1898 and I told the audience that within 100 years there will be two cars in every garage. Now, mind you, remember that there were no roads back then, and there were, the cars were just stinky old heavy machines that were very expensive and very unreliable. That people would fly everywhere on Earth if they had to travel for more than a few days to get somewhere. They would generally fly, and man would have walked on the moon and been back. and we would have had this thing called a computer that could do all the calculations. Now, we're living in the horse and buggy and the candle and fire, to cook your food and to heat your house. And to tell them that everything will be electrified, they will have 2 cars in every garage, will fly everywhere on the earth, and will have gone to the moon and back. You would have burned me at the stake. And so we're suffering from the same phenomenon here, where people who study technology, who study history, who study culture, and who study strategy and power can see these trend lines and can predict what it's going to mean for human beings using the power of space to uplift the human condition. But to the uneducated mind, or the mind that has not studied it, it sounds like fantastical Buck Rogers stuff, and they don't want to hear about it. They think you're crazy.
Last question: from the current existing platforms that we have in space, without revealing anything operational or technical, of course, or classified, do we have pretty much eyes on everything in the world?
No. And again, this is the other side of the coin we just talked about. The first side of the coin was that people don't understand the power of space and what it can do to either uplift the human condition or destroy the human condition if improperly used. The other side of the coin is people assume things that are not true. They assume that America is so dominant that, the movies, just like Ghost Fleet you mentioned, but you take your sci-fi movie, and it makes it look like we can see everything all the time and act on it within seconds, and it's just not true. And this is the real danger, is making assumptions that are not true. So back to your first point and the events of yesterday. This is true in history. America is the most powerful nation on planet Earth, and we're the most powerful nation because we have the most powerful economy. And don't ever forget, the economy is everything. It is the foundation of all national security. We have a bunch of countries out there, from North Korea, Russia, China, Iran, ISIS, even though it's not a country. It is a movement. History will play out that they will gang up on America. They will get together, and they will. And if we do not have enough economic might to be able to hold them at bay, our civilization will decay. Just like the British Empire was the greatest empire in the history of mankind in 1914, and they were almost excited about going to battle with Germany in World War I. And after the war, after they lost an entire generation of men, they turned to their best intellect, Dr. Fisher, and asked the question, why did we lose an entire generation? And he did some research, and he came back to the nation of England and said, the reason we lost a generation is not because we did not have superior equipment. We had the best single bolt rifle, the best Napoleonic tactics with precision, courage. We lacked vision and strategy. And even though they could see the development of the machine gun and the development of poison gas, they ignored it, believing that they had superiority of will and spirit to overcome technology.
General Kwast, keep coming back. That was a great introduction, first a visit on the Hugh Hewitt Show, and I appreciate it. Lieutenant General Stephen Kwast, retired United States Air Force. Thank you, friend.